David Levine. Today is April 9th, 2022, and I'm in San Diego at the American Association of Plastic Surgeons. As part of the ICON project, I interview icons in plastic surgery who, in a nutshell, were forward thinkers or teachers, innovators who have contributed to our society and what we have accomplished to this date. I have the privilege to interview Dr. Donald MacKay. Dr. MacKay, thank you for coming. I appreciate it. And I start this out pretty simply. Would you state your full name, date of birth, your parents' name, and family, children, just for the record?
Happy to, and thanks for doing this. My name is Donald Roy MacKay. I was born on the 19th of April, 1953, in Johannesburg in South Africa. My parents were David James MacKay and Joan Adelaide Colette Hossack, later MacKay, and she hated that third addition to her name. My father's grandfather was originally from Scotland, and that's how the Mackays, at least our branch of it, came to be in South Africa.
Okay. And wife, children?
So, Susan Jane MacKay, the best decision I ever made in my life. And three wonderful boys, Duncan, Andrew, and Callum, sticking with the Scots theme. And
you told me that Duncan is in a fellowship right now.
Yep. He went to Duke as an undergrad. He did medical school with a combined MD MBA at University of Pennsylvania, and then completed his plastic surgery training at Penn as well, and is now doing craniofacial surgery at Stanford.
Okay, great.
A dream.
Wonderful. Now I'm going to read some things because I didn't get a chance in my introduction. Is that you're the past president of the Robert Ivy Society of Plastic Surgeons, or you can, if I correct me, or as I go through this, American Society of Maxillofacial Surgeons. You're involved with Operation Smile, which we'll talk about. The American Craniofacial Council of the American Council of Academic Plastic Surgeons. You can see there's a lot here, so that's why I had to read it. Past president of the American Association of Plastic Surgeons, past chairman of the American Board of Plastic Surgery, president of the Northeast Society of Plastic Surgeons, president of the American Association of Plastic Surgeons, and the chief of plastic surgery at the Hershey Medical Center for 20 years. Did I leave anything out?
Well, I'm no longer the chief at Hershey. I'm now the interim chair of the Department of Surgery. So that's a bit of a change.
And we were talking a little bit about your history, that you trained in South Africa, but when you came here, you had to repeat your residency.
Yeah.
I thought that was a painful thing to have to do. But would you just tell us the history of that, how you ended up here?
Yeah, well, I started out life as a dentist. After high school, and the British system, you go into the professional schools straight out of high school. My grandfather was a larger-than-life figure and the dental school. He was one of the guys who founded the dental school there. So I went to dental school first and realized as I was going through it that really I didn't have the passion that he did. Even after 50 years, I went to a talk that he gave on 50 years of dental practice. And I didn't have the passion, even as a student, that he had. And I thought to myself, I better find something where I feel that. So I did medicine afterwards, with his blessing. Plastic surgery was unusual. I knew two things coming out of medical school. I was going to be a surgeon and definitely not a plastic surgeon.
Interesting.
So I had an orthopedic surgery job lined up, and I had 6 months to fill in. And I spoke to one of my friends, and he said, you know, what would you suggest? He said, do plastics. And I said, why? He said, they do hand. I said, those guys do hand, really? So I thought I'd do plastic surgery, learn about wounds, and take it easy before I started the hard part of orthopedics. And I'd never worked so hard in my life. I was on 1 in 3, and every third weekend we covered the whole weekend, and we covered 3 hospitals, and I never had so much fun. And this whole world just opened up to me. So it was by accident, and what a wonderful accident.
And this was in South Africa?
It was in South Africa. Okay. And towards the end of my training in South Africa, Ernie Manders, who was the chief at Hershey at the time, he was a James IV traveling fellow, which is a big deal through the American College of Surgeons. He came out, and by a series of coincidences, I and my wife ended up going on a trip for supposed to be, you know, the royalty of South African plastic surgery. One of the guys dropped out, and we went in his stead to the game reserve. We were sitting around a campfire, and Ernie Manders was saying to me, "So what are you going to do with your life, young man?" And I said, "Well, sir, I'm going to go and study craniofacial surgery in Paris, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to be the best craniofacial surgeon in South Africa." And he said, "No, you've got to come to Hershey." And he was really an attractive guy. I don't know how well you know Ernie. He's the most enthusiastic person you'll ever meet. And he made it possible. So we went out to Hershey. When I first arrived, I thought, this isn't going to last long. I'm used to living in big cities. And Hershey at the time had this medical center stuck in the middle of a cornfield. And there wasn't a hell of a lot. You couldn't get decent bread. You couldn't get bagels. It was kind of shocking. So I apologized to my wife and said, you know, just give it 6 months and then we can withdraw gracefully. And essentially, it's more than 30 years later.
Wow.
It's just been the most incredible place.
Great. And you mentioned that you started out with a DDS degree, or what, in Scotland?
Yeah, it's a BDS.
BDS, okay.
BDS,
but that was in respect or admiration of your grandfather?
By the time I'd finally made up my mind, I had 18 months to go. So it made sense to complete it. In fact, I put myself through medical school by doing dentistry on the weekends and the odd night. And it's never been wasted. I've ended up, you know, doing mainly pediatric plastic surgery, cleft and craniofacial and orthognathics, and it's been invaluable.
Well, we talked, and you started the first, we were talking earlier, the first interdisciplinary clinic in craniofacial clinic.
Well, the craniofacial surgery was at the Hershey Medical Center, but I work at the Lancaster Cleft Palate Clinic. And the Lancaster Cleft Palate Clinic is in Lancaster, PA. It's about 30 miles away from the Hershey, the main campus of Penn State's medical school. And it was founded in 1938. It was the first multidisciplinary clinic in the world. And it set the tone and the pattern for how cleft care is carried out around the world from Lancaster.
And I think that, and I assume that, well, I would hope that most residents understand that don't have a craniofacial clinic, that it has to be multidisciplinary, because ear, nose, and throat, ophthalmic, psychologists, dentists, oral surgeons, etc.
Speech therapy.
Speech therapy. You have to have many people sitting around a table to discuss the better welfare, excuse me, of these unfortunate patients.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot. Each patient takes a while to evaluate.
And you know, the real joy about that is that you're almost like a surgical primary care doc. You get to know these kids sometimes before they're born. You get to know them and their family over the length of their treatment into their late teens. You're not going to make a hell of a lot of money, but it's an incredible privilege to be part of that.
No, I understand, and fortunately, I trained in a program that had a clinic like that, and it was great. It was, I look forward to every Wednesday at 1 o'clock for 4 hours, coming through with all the different problems that they had and how to solve them. So I'm going to ask you a few questions here about where Did you tell me where you met your wife? You said it was the best decision you ever made.
In Johannesburg.
Okay.
We had mutual family friends.
Okay.
And in fact, she had dated my brother had dated her before I did. But and the first time we actually went out, she asked me out. Thankfully, I said yes, and the rest is history.
Yes,
like I said,
as we say,
the
yeah.
best decision. Yeah.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about what inspired you to go into plastic surgery. If you elaborate a little bit more, and again, you may have touched on it, but the mentors that you had that brought you to where you are today as an icon.
Well, in South Africa, the chief in the unit that I trained is this chap Saul Braun, who was, he was inspiring. He convinced me that this is the specialty that I wanted to do. He's a good friend of Dr. Jim Mays, Lawrence Chait.
Sure.
There's another, they did their fellowships together in Louisville and in Australia, and he was another great inspiration, incredibly accomplished plastic surgeon. So they kind of set me on the path. In terms of the mentors that I've had here, Ernie Manders made it possible for me to come here. And then the list is long.
Okay.
Jim May was a visitor at the national meeting in South Africa. He and then Bill Graham, both of whom are past chairs of the American Board of Plastic Surgery, were incredible mentors in helping me navigate the board process. I had to appeal to the board. And you were talking about me redoing my training. They didn't make me redo everything. I didn't have to do the 5 years of general surgery. I got credit for that, largely because of their advocating for me. And Barry Noon, the same thing. I had met Barry, who was chair of the credentials committee at the time. And I redid plastic surgery. They added a residency at Hershey and managed to do that, and then everything became possible in organized plastic surgery.
I admire you for doing that. That's a tough road to hoe. And you've seen momentous shifts in plastic surgery during your illustrious career. Just tell us a little bit about them and how you viewed them, good, bad, or ugly.
I've been fortunate in many ways because I still learned how to do cross-leg flaps in South Africa as a resident. My big innovation there was putting external fixators on instead of the plaster of Paris and broomsticks and that kind of thing. But then saw the explosion of the myocutaneous flaps, and then microsurgery, and then my field of cleft and craniofacial and maxillofacial. The whole field of craniofacial surgery was this incredibly exciting new frontier. The fact that you could move the mid-face around, and the kids did great. That was remarkable. I think another one of the big innovations was the application of rigid fixation at that time. It made some of these things, some of the stuff that we could only dream about, possible. And then Joe McCarthy's work on distraction. All of this was happening in the soft tissue realm, going from myocutaneous flaps to free flaps, and then to what we would regard as fairly crude now, but
yes,
then these highly sophisticated perforated flaps, and it's like, if you know your anatomy, the sky's the limit. It's incredible.
I appreciate that. When you were talking, I was thinking in the 1920s, it was suggested we close the patent office because nothing new is going to be invented. I thought about plastic surgery in 1975, when I finished my residency. We did an Earl, and Jim Lehman,
right.
That we did a myocutaneous dorsal flap, delayed it, brought it around the front. Right. I never got to see, that's the disadvantage you have as a resident. You don't get to see long-term follow-up. Because if it's 6 months before you're finished, that's it. but that was like an innovative thing, because before that we were putting in inadequate implants with terrible results. And needless to say, the paradigm shift is now we do microvascular. And we, it's funny how the wheel comes full circle. Now the implants, they're putting them, the operation to extirpate cancer is not as aggressive, so now they can put implants with expanders. So they've come the full circle with that. But it's interesting. What's going to be new? And there's always something on the horizon.
Lots of exciting.
I appreciate that input. What do you feel is your greatest professional accomplishment?
I think from a professional point of view, there are two aspects. One is the positions that I've been able to serve in. The number of societies that I've been fortunate to lead. I would say the ones where I felt the biggest impact was being on the Residency Review Committee and being involved. You're right at the coalface, and you're deciding how future plastic surgeons are going to be trained, and setting up the framework and ensuring that the product that we produce is good. That's very satisfying. Service on the board was really awesome. You've got, and it's healthy, I don't know how many boards and committees and that you've served on in your institutions, but on the board you've got these amazingly accomplished people. There are no retiring wallflowers. You have some pretty vigorous discussions. But once you come up with a solution and consensus, you go forward. It's incredibly healthy. I've loved that. And then the honor of the association is, you kind of pinch yourself.
Well, in that vein, talk a little bit about the Operation Smile, because we discussed that a little bit before this.
I was persuaded by Bill MacKay. His son actually trained as an orthopedic, in orthopedic surgery at Penn State, at Hershey. And through that contact, Bill asked me to join him on one of these, these big efforts. And it was life-changing. You go on one of these missions and you can't stop. You can't not go again. The ability to participate in something that is so easy for us and so life-changing for the folks that we have the privilege of taking care of, it's pretty remarkable. And working with colleagues from all over the country, one of those missions that I went on, I changed the way I practiced after watching a Bolivian surgeon who didn't have his English wasn't great, but Moises Fernandez is his name. He's a technical master. And my repairs are better having been on that mission. I got involved in education. The McGee's got me involved in the program where we get residents from around the world. They come for an educational weekend, and then they get paired with mentors that go to one of the OpSmile sites. I led that program for a while, and then later on, Bill prevailed on me to be the chief medical officer, which I did for 4 years. It's immensely fulfilling.
How many cleft lips and palates do you think you did during that period?
I don't know, a lot. I wouldn't like to kind of tally it up, but it on a busy day we could do 8, 9 in a day, which is pretty remarkable. And emphasizing safety and all this kind of thing. It was a great experience. That I'm going to continue doing in some way.
And I'm assuming you've kind of mentioned Ernie Manders. And I said, who do you admire? Well, my question was, who do you admire most, or professional or personal?
So professionally, there are lots of them. when I look at people that I hope I would emulate in a professional career, it would be folks like David Larson, Jim May. I think they are great examples of how to conduct yourself professionally. Bill Graham was the same. Personally, I admire my parents. My dad was a mechanical engineer, and he was fairly quiet but incredibly strong character. You knew the right from wrong. He was humble, and my mom taught me kindness.
Great.
And then my wife, of course.
Best decision you ever made, isn't that what you said?
I ever made. Yeah.
Would you give us some words, and you're still in practice now, right?
I am.
Okay, so nothing to say about retirement, but how about...
I've got lots to say.
Oh, really?
I've been watching, so I watched Jim May, in particular Jim May and David Larson, talk about this at various meetings at the association. And I'm not going to carry on much longer. Right now I'm serving as the interim chair of the Department of Surgery, and I've been in that position for 3 years. That's great, but I think it's coming. I'm 69, and it's probably time. Bill Graham said to Barry Noon years ago, and Bill had got ill, and he told Barry Noon, "Don't be afraid of retiring." And I watched how David and Jim May have done it, and I don't think we need it. There are so many other things that I want to do. I want to be a better fly fisherman. I want to spend more time with my family. My bagpipe playing can certainly improve a lot. I want to spend time on the trout streams with my friends. There's plenty to do.
Well, and
Op Smile as well.
Yes, and I want to ask you a question after the interview is over, but one of the doctors I talked to earlier, we were talking about retirement, and I mentioned, and of course, what you're saying is have a plan.
Yeah.
And I retired when I was 72.
Right.
And somebody said, "You have any regrets?" I said, "Yeah, I should have done it a year earlier." I think that sometimes as surgeons, we pass that point that we shouldn't be operating anymore, because as you know, time, gravity, all the things that come with getting older, they affect you. We're not immortal. So I appreciate you've got plan B.
I can still do a two-jaw orthognathic case faster than my junior faculty person who's pretty slick. So I think it's probably time.
Well,
go out on top.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're. Yeah, I agree with that. I think
I don't want to be remembered as you better send a resident in. MacKay's operating again. Oh my God,
Yeah. No. Well, or somebody escorting you out. I got it. Any words of wisdom for future and present generations of plastic surgeons?
One of the things I asked him it's not easy. This is an important job that we're doing. But just reflect on where you are as a resident. You're training to be a plastic surgeon in the United States of America. Just think on that a minute. It's unbelievable. There are people that would die to have that privilege. We do an important job. We have the privilege of taking care of people. Mm-hmm. Don't worry too much about the money. You're going to live like a king, even the most destitute of us. We live incredibly well. You're going to have an amazingly fulfilling career. You've got patients that are going to tell you stuff they don't even tell their parents, their wives, their spouses. As a plastic surgeon, And particularly if you're involved in stuff like kids that you repair a cleft, and you see the gratitude and the effect that it has on the family, it's nothing better.
Well, I agree with you 110% if that was possible, but it really isn't, because you're a doctor and 100% is all we can give. But I appreciate those words of wisdom, because we are privileged and we are lucky.
Yeah.
And what we get to do,
You know,
I can't even think of 1/10 of, 1,000 to 1% of people in the world
Yeah.
could accomplish. And the way I look at it, I don't care if you're worth $1 billion. What we did or doing is
Yeah.
more fun
Yeah.
and challenging.
and I think it's important to remember that, when the health system now is so complex, and we've got increasingly businessmen running it, and the medical record, there are so many things that can easily detract from what you do. But just remember what you do. And those other guys, they don't have a job like you. You got the best job in the world.
It's what I used to tell people. I got the best job in the
Yeah.
world for what I get to do. I appreciate that. I got a question for you. Where do you think plastic surgery will be predictive-wise in 25 years, the next quarter century?
I'm
Anything
excited. I think any folks who are concerned about who we have doing it or where it's going to go, come to a resident interview day, and you see the remarkable talent that want to do what we do. I think so one of our biggest innovations, I think, was composite tissue allotransplantation. And I think that says a lot about our specialty. It was plastic surgeons that did it. We were doing the arm transplants and the hand and the face. It wasn't some of the other specialties. But I think the next thing that is really exciting is tissue engineering.
Yeah.
And I'm privileged to have on my faculty one of the guys who's like this big thinker, big vision guy. And he is set up with a multi-campus research proposal that is going to be funded by the university. Then collaboration with bioengineering and material science folks. That's 3 main researchers. And their proposal was, it's like a moonshot, to print the human face. This is the big vision out there, to print the human face. The stuff that is going to come out of the basic science that leads up to that will cover every aspect of surgery in the future. It'll be, the bone, the orthopedics, with muscle, nerve, and build on all the stuff that our past knowledge. But one day we'll be printing a human face.
And when you say that, I'm glad when you say printing the human face, you're saying from the point of view of stem cells, creation,
Yep. Yep.
So that an auto or transplantation, which is amazingly interesting. I'm not sure how successful they are long term, particularly when you're talking about the face, even extremities, which you said, right?
We're the innovators.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that, and I think that's going to be interesting 25 years from now. I don't know if it will be.
I mean, there are already biological printers, and it's these material science folks who are building the lattices that are going to be populated by the cells that will. That's incredible.
All right.
That is like a moonshot.
Okay, one other question, and then we'll finish up. But this interview is a little different in that we shut down for 2 years. In January 2020 was the first COVID case. And just how did that affect you in your practice and your life?
So it came at a time where I was the interim chair of the Department of Surgery. So from my plastic surgery practice, largely shut down, apart from the trauma. But I was busy, and I was in a position to help plan the response of the surgery department for the hospital that we work in. And I think we did a great job. got the right people on board. We built a team. We protected the folks that might be vulnerable. We ramped up, used our ICU guys and the trauma folks to help take the pressure off the medical intensivists and the hospitalists and taking care of the COVID patients. Anybody with a board certification in general surgery, who'd had general surgery training, then filled in and did some of the trauma or the acute care trauma. I had, one of my faculty guys did a cholecystectomy in the middle of the night. So it was busy. It was stressful, but I was pretty busy. I'd leave my wife at home, and she, unfortunately, is kind of shut down, and I would go to work and have some purpose in what I was doing every day. I'm glad it's over.
Yes, yeah.
I'm really glad.
For now.
Yeah.
Anything else you would like to highlight, Dr. MacKay? Anything else you want to talk about?
Just
Cover.
Kind of pinching myself again to be in a group of all the folks that you've interviewed in the past. That's pretty damn special.
Well, it's been an honor and a privilege to interview you.
Thank you.
And you're
so
an
much,
icon, in case nobody told you that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.